Good?
1 second.
It's delayed, so probably we should begin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, everybody out there. I'm Gina Olivares from Byteflows Dynamics. Today, we say hello to Andy. Hello, Andy. How are you?
Hola, Gina.
And thank you, everybody out there, for tuning in to this new initiative that we have to give seminars every day live. So you have to forgive us if we mess it up a little bit. So thank you so much. And today, as we promoted, we're going to talk about the star rating for MLTC plans. This is a program from the state of New York. We're gonna all the information that we use and that we're gonna use here is publicly available, so you can go and look for it. But we're gonna explain you the rating process, as we have said many times before when we talk about the MLTC. The star rating carries on a very not complex, but processing the raw data that the state publishes. So today I'm
Okay, so let me. Okay, so let me just give a brief overview for anyone who doesn't know. So what we are specifically doing is giving an example that of one of the products that we are building that applies to insurance companies in the state of New
yeah.
York. And but the idea behind this product is actually kind of starting from like how to use data science to help insurance companies with marketing. And in marketing, few things are important, such as understanding trends. How are your competitors doing? How are they growing? Where are they growing? Kind of like having a big overview of what is going on. And in general, having a good rating also your brand. So
Yeah.
if you're a insurance company, if you're a 2 star versus a 5 star, and all else being equal, more likely new members will choose something that has a higher rating if everything remains equal. So basically, how do you go from like using now data science and some of the techniques that we have developed, some of the simulations, to help the insurance companies? So in this case, it's to help the insurance companies obtain a higher rating, star ratings,
Exactly.
so that their brand improves and it shows that they are always improving. It shows that they care about their members and they're always striving to remain on top. And because this is relative, so the way that it actually works is that you have maybe like 50 different insurance companies in the state of New York, and you get a raw score on how you are performing.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end of the year, the state gives it has some standardization measures. It processes the data and then decides whether you are a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, or a 5 star.
Yep.
So you can think of that as some kind of like a bell curve. The bell curve is very complicated, but if you really understand how these calculations work, then you can really push your resources so that you can focus on the domains that you need to improve to get that 4 or 5 star, or to maintain it
Exactly.
for the next rating.
Exactly. When you are
And
working with that kind of data, and when you already have the information of the process data, you can get also, I mean, not only the opportunity to be able to improve in different domains, in different areas, and the overall star rating that for everybody out there, we're going to explain everything that we are going to we are talking about. But also, it gives you a lot of information about your plan and your competitors, and that is a really year. It counts 2 semesters from January, June, depending on the year, and July, December of the same year. So, and the star rating is published the next year using the data of the semester January, June. Okay? But it's important to keep tracking of what is going on even for the second semester. For example, right now, it is really important for everybody out there for your plan, because the raw data is going to publish soon on December. And that data is going to be used for the star rating that is going to be published on March. So we can give you, we're gonna explain better during the presentation, but we can give you right away as soon as the state publishes the raw data in this month. We can give you a prediction. That is one of the things that I'm talking here in the deliverables, that we can give you the prediction for the star rating process using the data that is going to be released this month, for the star rating and for the quality incentives. Today we're going to be focused on the star rating, okay? But because of the information that is published by the state is used also for the quality incentives, we can give you also that kind of information ahead of time. And I don't know if you want to tell everybody out there how important, because you are the founder of this company, how important it is to have information ahead of time, right?
So, well, yeah. So we can talk a little bit. So on the deliverables, basically, what we do is that the data is published, and then we
Process.
do the processing of the data to give you a prediction as to where you're going to be. And this can be a few months ahead, so maybe like 3 or 4 months ahead of time.
Yep.
You know whether you're going to be a 3 or a 5 star company.
Yep.
But you also know for the quality incentives, you will also know whether you are going to be on a tier 1, 2, or 3.
Uh-huh.
And that can also help you with your budgeting, with your incentives, so whether you're like hiring people or any kind of like structuring that you're doing on a strategy side. So those are the predictions. So the predictions are one part. So the predictions basically means that, okay, the data is published now, and then we tell you ahead of time how you are going to be doing. In addition to that, a lot of value comes from understanding the trends.
Yep.
You can very easily, so what usually happens is that internally you're probably like analyzing the data and the raw data for trends. So like how are other firms improving? Maybe they're like by 2%. So you think that, okay, if you improve by 2%, then maybe you can push yourself to the next tier. But what we have shown in a few of the seminars is that the raw data is important, but what's more important actually is to understand the trends based on the process data.
On the process, exactly.
Where a lot of things, a lot of features come into account, like the size of the company is important,
Yeah.
which side you fall, like on the left or the right. So understanding those trends, then you have more realistic goals. So instead of saying that, okay, like we see that in the past year, past 2 years, everybody has been improving in these domains by like 1 or 2 or 3%. That gives you some idea, but like really knowing your cutoff lines so that you have a lot more realistic goals in where you should put your resources.
Yeah.
That's the first level. The simulations, they also help in that if you're saying that you want to go from point A to point B, say either to remain a 5-star rating or to move from a 3 to a 5, like what is the easiest path to go from that point to that point?
Exactly. Be able to identify the domains that will help you to improve faster, or and investing in the most smart way your resources, right?
Yeah, and we've talked about this. It's similar to how it works in the
Elections.
like the elections.
Yes.
Like a very good case, it's basically what happened in the last election cycle, the general election, where one of the candidates, so Hillary Clinton won by about 3 million votes, the popular vote, but she lost the electoral map.
Exactly.
And that's a classic case because that's you need to understand the rules of the game, and when you understand it, you want to, and based on the resources that you have, where should you be focusing your resources? So kind of like identifying those purple states that you need to show up, like the Michigan and the Wisconsin and those kind of states.
Pennsylvania and things
Kind of like doing the same thing in this space. That's the idea.
That's the idea, yeah. So we can help you a lot with those things. Actually, for example, the predictions, for example, we deliver with a very simple report that it contains, for example, a table with the predictions, right, the general predictions. Also, the table with the overall the star rating of all the plans, of the predictions that we do. And also, for example, we explain here, just chose one of the domains that is considered in the star rating. That is the one that we are going to talk about to explain more or less the calculations, right? how we analyze the domain. Okay, it's just a simple data visualizations about the information that can be given from the data that can be obtained from the domain. Okay, this is, for example, a very simple a sample, sorry, of the report that we deliver for the star rating, just for the predictions, for example, and the analytical part. And for example, for the quality incentives, we give something similar. The things that you were talking about, also, if you, it probably is not very clear because it's a little bit small. The cutoff lines, we give you that one too. But where are you considering the cutoff lines to make the jump to the next stars and so on? And also we do the same for the quality incentives. Okay, we give you the table with the measures that are considered, the result that you obtain, and how many points were awarded considering your result.
Gina, can you zoom in a little bit or make the
Let me see if I,
that bigger?
I don't know. Can you see it better? Yeah.
Mm, can you try to make it a little bigger? Like,
There?
because there's a like
Yeah, it's kind of there.
mhm.
For example, there. Here we can see the lines. If those lines are the cutoff lines, for example, in the case of the quality incentives for the percentiles. We're going to give a seminar the next week about how we calculate all these things, the same things for the quality incentives. But we give you the cutoff lines. For example, if you see this purple line, it gives you below that line. All the plans that are below that line are going to get 0 points for the quality incentives in this specific measure. Okay? And so on. For example, if you identify the next one, the plans that are above that line is going to get, if I remember correctly, for this measure, it's 2.5, right? For example, here, this is the table with all the how we present the results. This is we can see the measurement period and the plan and the result and the points awarded. But we're going to explain this in another session more clearly. But the idea is that we give you the result column, for example, is the one that is delivered by the state. What you have to calculate is how many points are you going to be awarded accordingly to that result. Okay? It's more or less clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we're gonna go into that next week.
Yeah, why don't you get started? Yeah, go ahead with the stars.
So, um, so now, well, you already talked about this and why is important to improve in the star rating, to maintain current members, to check out how many plans are entering the market, if you have unsatisfied members in your plan, or maybe go and chase the unsatisfied members of other plans so you can acquire them, and planning ahead of time the allocation of resources. It can help you also for growth, improve your ratings, and to keep your current members really, really happy. Okay, so now let's start with the star rating. The star rating. What are we going to do? We're going to describe the process of the star rating, and we're going to give you all the steps, and we will exemplify it with one of the domains that are considered. To begin with, what is very important? What is the MLTC performance data? Probably some people out there, they have no idea what are we talking about. We're going to explain what is it, what is the type of performance data, how is it gathered, how is the star rating process per domain, and the overall as you comment. So the MLTC performance data is, as I told you at the beginning, is a semi-annual evaluation. It is carried out January, June, and July, December of every year. Okay? And it has to be with the it has to be with some measures that the states considers, where those measures assess the quality of care that the plan provides. okay, of every plan. Is that clear?
Mhm.
See? So keep in mind, so the state decides to have some measures. Those measures are two type of measures. Either they are population-based measures or survey-based measures, okay? And the results are reported for every semester of the year, okay? Why is important this distinction? Because to process the data, the states do separate things considering if they are population-based measures or if they are survey-based measures. But let's go to the information. So for example, let me zoom in a little bit. I, I don't know if it is clearer there. Yeah. So for example, we have here, this is what I'm talking about. Can you see the measure? What kind of measures you can have that every plan has to deliver the information about the influenza vaccination, the pneumococcal vaccination, dental exams, eye exams, hearing exam, and so on. So in general, we have, and for example, all these measures are gathered in one domain. Okay? And let me go over here if you can see it better. And for example, and we have some areas. So one of the thing is, okay, so there are in total 18 measures. All of them are grouped in 12 domains. Go here. In 12 domains, and they are distributed in 4 areas. What is the main idea here? So the star rating process is carried on per domain and overall. So we are going to be grading or rating each domain. Okay? Is more or less clear? Okay?
Mhm.
So it depends, as I show you, for example, there are domains that contains more measures, okay? More than one, and there are going to be domains that only contain one measure, okay? In the next slide, I'm going to show you how the data is presented. And every measure, as I told you, can be a survey-based measure or population-based measure, and so on. Is that, for now, is more or less clear?
I think you can start with
With
the,
the, yeah.
yeah, and then we can go back.
Okay,
Yeah.
if there is, okay. For the process of processing the data, that is the star rating process, it contains 7 steps that I'm going to explain every one of them. But we have the standardization of the measure, the measure limits, trim the standardized measure scores, the plan domain scores, the domain rating, the overall score, and the overall rating. Right now, probably it sounds very confusing, but we're going to do it step by step. So let's begin. For the purposes of this exercise, I chose one domain that is urinary continence stable or improved, and it contains one measure that is urinary continence stable or improved, and this measure specifically is a population-based measure, okay? Why is important? Because of the process of, for processing the data. So we begin. For number one is the standardization of the measure, okay? This is our step number one. In this case, because we're talking about a measure that is population-based measure, the standardization process, it has to be carried on. I don't know if you see clearly the formula.
Uh huh.
Yep, it is carried out using this formula. What it means, for example, I'm going to try to zoom in. So, for example, this is the information that the state publishes. See, for example, here we have on the left we have all the plans that are participating or have information about this measure for this specific period. Then we have the measure. In this case, is the urinary continence stable or improved, and we have two columns. That is the denominator This denominator, it is a number that is related with the number of persons that participate in this specific measure, okay? And the result, this is the raw result that the state publishes, okay? This is the data that we are going to process. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we have all this information for every plan that participates in this measure. Now, we have the same thing for every plan, and also we have it for the state overall. If you can see here, the plan name is statewide, and this is like the result for all the state. Okay? Why is important that? Because we go back to our formula, and we can see here the standardization of the measure, that is step number one. It considers plan rate minus statewide rate, and appears the plan denominator. So when I'm talking about the plan rate, is the result that appears here for every plan, okay? Then the statewide rate, it is the value that appears for the statewide, the same result, okay? So we introduce those numbers to the formula, and also we have the denominator, either the statewide denominator, that is the total number of people that participate in this measure all over the state, or the plan denominator, that is the same number of people, but for per plan. Is that more or less clear? All this,
Yeah.
all this information is available, and you can use it, and you can put the numbers, and you will get some numbers. Okay? I'm going to show you in the next slide what numbers are those. So this is our first step. We just compute those standardization of the measure. Okay? So we move, and what is happening here? What is happening here is the following. Let me zoom in a little bit. I don't know if it's okay. So what happens? If you can see in the x axis, now we don't have numbers like 82, 55, 7, or those numbers. We have negative numbers and positive numbers. That is what is happening with the standardization. We convert the original result, the raw result, to this type of numbers. Okay, here this is a plot just comparing all the plans. Is every plan is one dot. Okay, here we have the raw result. Okay, and here we have the in the x-axis, as I told you, is the result of the standardization of or applying that formula that we have there. Why is important in this case? Remember that in the formula appear the denominator, that as I told you is the number of people participating in that specific measure on every plan, right? Why is
Mm-hmm.
important? Because, for example, let's consider. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Let's consider, for example, these 2 points. Okay, you can see that this point is smaller and this one is bigger, right?
So wait, so just to your by result you mean raw
The
data.
raw data, yeah, yeah, yeah. When I'm
Okay.
talking about result, or is the rate, the plan rate, the raw data that the state
Raw
publishes.
data.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but let's consider these two plans, okay? This is one plan. We don't know who he is, and this is another plan. This plot is the standardization versus the raw data, the result, okay? So of course, if we were talking about something very similar, the higher your result, the higher is gonna be your standardization, right? In principle, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, that is not true. Why? Because we are considering the denominator, the number of people who is participating in that specific measure, that is related with the size of your plan. Okay? What is happening? How can it affect it? So, for example, this one, the denominator is considered here in this plot of the size of the dot. Of course, this one is smaller than this one in the denominator, right? Do you see it?
Um, I don't see your mouse.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Here, do you see it? Nope.
No.
Okay, there is an orange
Yeah.
an orange dot, okay,
Uh-huh.
and then like slightly to the right a pink dot, slightly smaller. Do you see it? Okay,
Uh-huh.
so what happens? Uh, Let me zoom out. Keep in mind those points. Of course, the pink one obviously obtain a raw result smaller than the orange one. It's clear, right?
Right.
Right? But what happens is more to the right, its
Right.
standardization is larger than the other one. So what
Right.
happens? Here, both of them obtain a raw score smaller than the statewide rate. Okay? That is why they are in the negative numbers. Okay? But what is happening? The plant that is larger, that has more population, it throws more to the left because of that number, because it has more population. So that is one of the things that we have to consider in this type of measures, the denominator. Simply because you get a good result or a not so bad result is not going to help you alone. You have to consider also the size of your plant. Is more or less clear?
Yeah, so basically, okay, so just to go overview this graph, what we have in here, it's
On the
on the
y-axis.
y-axis we have the raw
Yeah.
data. So each plan, that's the raw data that you received for that particular
Yeah, for
domain.
example, let me go back.
And then we're going through the process. Basically, what Gina is showing, it's going through the process of, okay, how do we convert that raw data? Eventually, we want to convert that into a star.
Yeah.
And we're going to create these categories. So from 1 star to 5 stars. And like we talked about the bell curve, so this is not exactly a bell curve
Nope.
of the raw data itself.
No,
In
we
that
are in that
we're going
bridge.
through, yeah, so like one of the steps, we're going through this formula that we are standardizing the measure.
Yep.
And if it was like, it doesn't map, it's not a one-on-one mapping, the mapping is not clear, because that way we will just have a straight line in
Exactly.
the middle of the
Just
graph.
like a comment before you keep going,
Mhm.
that happens for the measures that are survey-based measures. They are not
Right.
considering the denominator in the standardization process, so it will describe a straight line. In this case,
Uh-huh.
as you can see, it cannot describe a straight line because of the introduction of the denominator into the formula. Okay?
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons, actually. So what's useful on the reports that
Exactly.
we have, it's basically, so yes, you do get the predictions
Yep.
and the trends, but more importantly, understanding how does your raw data translate into the categories, so that if you are, for example, for one of the measures, if you are in the 3 star rating, like knowing, like, are you closer to the 2 star or to the, or like left or right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you see that you're very close, for example, that it's easy to go from 3 to 4, that maybe just put some more resources in there, because you can easily pick up another
Yeah,
star.
probably you need to improve your either improve your result or probably consider more people in the denominator
Well,
or and both, of course.
yeah. So those are a few things that happen. Actually, okay. So the things that happen for, like, while these graphs are important, they change from month to month, but also from cycle to cycle.
Exactly.
What changes are a few things. So the size of the plans.
Exactly.
So if you were planning, for example, on improving your scores by 2%, because that's what you saw in maybe like the last year, what happens is that maybe some of the plans dropped out. So if some of the lower quality plans drop out, then you have to work a lot harder, for example, to improve,
Exactly.
or the other way around. So kind of like knowing which plans are dropping out and then recalculating your lines so that you know. It's basically similar to, like, if you took an exam, if you're taking a class and on the first midterm, maybe you got an 85 and that converted into an A minus. In the second midterm, you might improve. You might go from an 85 to an 87 or an 88, but then you might be surprised that somehow that converted into a B minus.
Exactly.
And because maybe the students who were not performing so well, maybe they dropped out. So you might be surprised to find yourself in that
And
space,
also,
or the other way around. Maybe some other students dropped out.
exactly, and you have to consider, as you said, the variables. For example, for this specific process, you have to consider the denominator, your result, the because of this example that you just gave, it's who are your competitors, who are your partners in the class. So you have to see how well or how bad they are doing, and also new plans that are entering the market. That is also that also can affect all this process. So all this information we can give it to you. You don't need to like pull your hair and, oh, how can I do it? We have all this information condensed, and we can give you the how can I say it, the result of all these variables, and how do they affect to your plan per domain, per and overall. Okay. So we can keep going. This is just step number one. It looks like very boring, but it's just plugging numbers right into the formula and you get the results. Okay. So let's go now with the limits. We have one of the things is, for example, the example that you just gave in the class. Sometimes we have to do a curve as a professors, right? So in order to keep everybody not so unhappy, so not everybody fails or everybody gets an A plus and things like that. So we have to establish limits, right? So everybody in the class can be inside those limits. This is more or less the same idea here. Okay, we have to calculate some limits. This is the way that we calculate it as it is said there in the slide. Okay, but the idea is that everybody has to be inside these limits. Okay, we cannot have very popular very smart students like scoring 110, right? And we cannot
Well, so if someone who does well in all of
in all of
them
them, yeah.
and gets 110, then eventually what you do is you bring it down to
Or
100,
to,
because you can't give more than an A plus,
exactly.
a little bit too
Yeah.
far, because you have these maybe like kind of outliers, so you try to bring them inside a little bit. Zero, even if they got zero, if they got a 10 or 20, you bring their score up to whatever the F would
Yeah,
correspond
like
to.
a 40 or a 50, for example. Yes.
Exactly. So you bring that up. So now you bring all of your scores from the left to a 40 or a 50, from the right to 100. So
Exactly.
everything falls in there.
Exactly. So everybody can, let's say that my F is at 50, my A plus is at 100. So everybody has to be in the inside those limits. And this is the same
Mhm.
idea. And this is the formula that you use. I'm not gonna go into that very much because it's just numbers and numbers and numbers. And every time that I explain this, everybody is kind of like, oh, formulas. But the idea is keep in mind the class. So you have to have everybody inside those limits. So nobody is crazy on the top or crazy on the bottom. Okay? So we bring all the plans that are outside those limits inside those limits, and then we can keep and we trim the standardized measure score. Okay? Is that clear?
Yeah, let's
So
go.
let's go now. Remember that this is for the measures. Okay, the star rating is given by domain and overall. Now we go to the plan domain. And this is when the stars begin to appear, finally. Okay, so now that you have that you trim the standardized measure score, then you have that the plan domain score, that is the average of the trim standardized measure scores within each domain. Why is the average? Because as I told you at the beginning, there are some domains that have more than one measure. In this case, it's very simple because we have just one measure in this domain that is urinary continence stable or improved. Okay? The domain rating. Okay? We we calculate the normal distribution percentiles, 0%, 10%, 30%, 70%, and 90% of the test statistics to assign the number of stars. So let me zoom in because probably it's not very clear. So we get the test statistics with this formula. I don't know if you see it. You can see it? Yes. Okay, that is the plan domain score is just the average that I told you about. You do the same thing with considering all the plans, and that is going to be the statewide average of domain scores. We introduce those numbers here in this formula, and N is the number of plans. So that's why it's important to consider who is dropping, who is entering into the market, and so on, because the number of plans matters. Okay? Then we obtain these results. That is going to be a lot of numbers, right? And then we calculate these percentiles, those percentiles that I talk about. Let me go. Okay? And for example, if you are between the 0% and the 10%, you will be assigned 1 star. Okay? If you're going to be between the 10% and the 30%, you're going to get 2 stars for this domain. Between the 30 and the 17, you're going to get 3. Okay? Between the 70 and the 90, you get 4 stars. And finally, if you are above the 90%, you get 5 stars. Okay? So now we can see those dash lines that you see here. Those are the percentiles. Okay? So the first 2 lines, the black one and the next one that is called salmon or pink, that will give you your all the plants that are inside that space they are gonna get 1 star, and then 2 stars between the green ones, and then or the it's like magenta, okay. Then the green ones is gonna be 3, the next green is gonna be 4, and above the purple is gonna be 5. Okay, is that more or less clear?
Yeah, I think keep going.
Now, just to see our predictions against the states, okay, is just to see how well are we doing compared to the states, okay. This is for the standardized measure score, the domain score, sorry, and this is for the star rating of this specific domain. When you see a pink color, is because we missed that plan in the star rating of that plan, but you can see that we got a fairly well result because we just missed 4th in this case. Actually, we just improved the algorithm and we just missed 2. But this is the number of stars, and every dot is a plan, and the pink ones are our results, and the green ones are the states. This is comparisons with the latest official results that the state published on March of this year. So to make the comparison how well we are doing. Okay? Up to here, are we okay? Okay. Now, number 6, the overall score. All these steps that we just did, the standardization, the calculating the limits and trimming the measures, and then the getting the start of the domain, we do this with all the 12 domains, okay? And we obtain stars for each domain, for each plan, okay? So at the end, we just sum all the stars that every plan obtained. Is that clear? Okay, so that is called the overall score. That is the sum of the total number of stars per plan in each domain. So, for example, one of the things that probably I forgot to tell you, none of the plans can get a 0 stars. They get at least, the lowest one is 1 star, okay, per domain. And the most stars that they can get in each domain is 5. So that is one thing. So in the worst case scenario, if you only score the lowest number of stars on each domain, you will get 12 in total, right? And if you are one of the best ones, you will get at most 60 stars. Are we clear?
Mm-hmm.
So we can see here, for example, let me zoom in again. So for example here, I don't know if you see it. Yeah, we have total of stars in the x axis, and all the stars are the different plants. Okay, we can see here that all the plants that score less than 30, scores that score less than between 30 and 40, between 40 and 50, and very, very few score um, above 50. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah.
So far so good. The most complex process we already did it, the standardization and everything. We just sum the 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 stars. Now we move on. That is not the overall. The overall, we have to calculate again a very complicated formula that I'm going to show you right now, but you don't have to be worried about that. I can be worried about that. So that is the formula. Now we consider the plan overall score. That is going to be the total of stars that every plan obtained. Okay? You take the average, considering all the plans. And again, is the total number of stars. You get the test statistics. That is going to give you that number. And then you do the same thing that we did before with the percentiles. We calculate the 10 percentile of those numbers that we obtained with this formula, the 10, the 30, the 70, and the 90%, and then we assign the overall rating. Okay? Now we can see it here in this plot, right? For example, the first line, the salmon dash line, from that line to the left, all the plants that are there only score 1 star. Okay? This is the cutoff lines that you were talking about at the beginning. This is the kind of cutting lines. So, for example, we can see for the yellow one, right? There is like a couple of plants on top of that line. So for them, it would be very easy to jump instead of getting 2 stars overall to get to the tree. Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
And so on. And between the yellow and the green one is the 4 star tier, the 3 star tier, sorry. And between the green and the blue is the 4. And from the blue to the purple one is the 5 overall. Okay? And that's it. And that's how you get the overall star rating and per domain. Andy, do you have any questions? I know it's I know for everybody out there it seems like very, very complicated, but by following the formulas and the numbers is very straightforward. Once you understand what are you doing and what you are calculating, getting the stars per domain and overall are simple once you understand what are you doing, right? And you understand how is the behavior and why do you need, for example, to trim the measures and things like that, and how the limits, the cutting lines are going to work. So, any questions? Andy,
Yeah.
wake up. It's
I'm
not so
here. I'm here.
boring. It's not so boring. It seems
It's a little bit boring, but okay.
no, I know it's boring, but we have to do it. Everybody out there, it's one of the concerns of our clients out there that it seems that very complicated the processing of the data. Of course, if you think it's boring, I don't think so. I have a lot of fun calculating all these things. So if you believe that you are going to be really, really bored about it, don't worry. Call me, send me an email. I already calculated for you. So you don't have to be worried about anything of these formulas, and we just give you the results. Any questions, Andy?
Um, do I have questions about? So this is just so there's two parts, right? So you have the ratings, but the Lagrange in general, we're using it for actually a lot of
Oh,
products.
okay, okay, okay. That is stop right there. Okay? This is just like the beginning of what we can do with Lagrange. This is just like the most simple calculation that we can do with Lagrange. Lagrange is a full product that uses, this is a small part, right? Because this is used for just the calculation of the star rating. But as I told you, we can do the quality incentives, and also we can not only make predictions, we can give you our analysis, your good domains, your bad domains, what can you do in the domains, and so on. Lagrange is a bigger, larger, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So you have basically, as far as the for the insurance plans, so those are the two obvious ones because a lot of
yeah,
this it's so the idea is how to move forward with using the data that is publicly available, alternative data
exactly.
sources, to help you with both marketing campaigns, but also the quality incentives. Because the quality incentives, the benefits are very clear
Yes,
at
the
the end of
money.
the year. Based on the size of the plan, you get a
Yeah,
bonus.
exactly. You get money.
Uh, but understanding that in real time, so that every month, for example, you are keeping an eye on plans that are
Yeah.
growing, how fast are they growing, plans that are dropping out. So adding all of those features into the algorithm and updating those cutoff lines so that you know at so every month you kind of get an idea like where do you fall on those lines,
Exactly.
so you can adjust. So whether you need to adjust uh, your incentives, whether you need to adjust, like there's a few things you might need to work on. Like in one case, being more realistic at least. Like, do you think that you can actually get to a tier
Yeah.
three? And for the stars, do you really think you can get into a five
Or
star?
for
Like, where should you like? Because you wanna spend money, but you also want to be a little bit conservative in that if you think that for that cycle, maybe the stars are out of reach, but then you could focus probably on the quality incentives and just focus on that. But also getting a real time update on all of these things.
exactly. No, we can do it every month, or for example, now that or every semester, depending on the needs of the clients. Also, for example, what we can do with Lagrange at some point is, for example, what does this is more like customized, but it's inside Lagrange, because now this is all these things are done using public data. So there is nothing going on. You don't have to be worried that you need to give us information from your plan specifically. Right now, we don't need it. But for example, let's say that you want to use Lagrange for purposes of to see, for example, if you want to see how much it's gonna give you as return in case you improve one or two stars, for example, in the overall. To give you an example, we
Okay.
can try to we can go and see what is happening with the plans that improve one or two stars, like every year, and how it is translated, for example, in improving the numbers of enrollment, right? And we can
Okay.
calculate how much money are you going to get with that. All that kind of things. Of course, this one is not now is not based on the on public information, right? Because we have to go inside your company and see the specific cases. But we can do that too. For example, what does that mean for your plan to improve one star or two stars, or in the money side? Not only how to take advantage in improving your ratings or the quality incentives, also how it is translated directly to you independently of what the state can provide for you. You know what I mean? That kind of things we can also do it. Right now, I'm telling you, this is just depending on each specific plan, but this is just one example of what can be done using public information. Yeah,
Okay. So we have to
we
go.
have to go.
Yep.
I hope you are not so bored out there, but I love to give this presentation because I love calculations. Uh, I really enjoy doing developing Lagrange AI and all this and getting the results and helping all our clients to discover where is the secret and what can they do better. And thank you so much, Andy, for the patience. And thank you, everybody out there, for the patience too. I know this one was tough, but you have to do it once in a while. Thanks so much, everybody. See you tomorrow and have a nice day. Bye bye.
Bye.